Now, bearded dragon care is constantly evolving. The way that we thought we were doing best for our bearded dragons in the 90s is vastly different than what we're doing today. In this bearded dragon care guide, I want to give the most up-to-date information on how we're caring for our bearded dragons in 2021. In order to do this, we'll be going over the 5 biggest bearded dragon care topics, that being enclosure size, heating and lighting, the humidity, the diet of the bearded dragon, and lastly, what to fill the enclosure with. So with all that being said, I guess it's time to sit back, relax, dive into some bearded dragon care, and roll the intro. And kicking off this list, we're going to be starting with number 1, the enclosure size you need for your bearded dragon. What's going to determine what you use as an enclosure size for your bearded dragon is going to be, well, the age of the animal. The best way to start this is going from youngest to oldest. So we'll start with the baby bearded dragon. Of course, baby bearded dragons being, well, around this size, they're not going to need as large a setup as when they grow into adults. So with that being said, I always recommend a 20-gallon as a bare minimum for the baby bearded dragon. This will last not a very long time, but I believe you can get a solid 6 months, maybe a little more, before your bearded dragon is definitely going to need an upgrade. Now, there's 2 ways you can go with the upgraded enclosure once your bearded dragon hits that pretty much sub-adult size. You can upgrade them from a 20-gallon to a 40-gallon. However, in my opinion, and really what the facts have been showing these days and how we're caring for our bearded dragons, that's kind of outdated as an adult size. At that point, you will actually need to upgrade from a 40-gallon to a larger setup. What exactly are those adult measurements? Well, they're gonna be somewhere around a 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot, like the enclosure right behind me, this Zen Habitat. This thing is perfect for bearded dragons, going from a sub-adult to adult and then having it in its forever home. If you guys are interested in a Zen Habitat enclosure, I made a little video going a little more in depth on that, and if you're interested in buying one, you can get one in the link below. Now, while I don't recommend you put a baby bearded dragon into the adult setup, you know, the 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot, I do believe after that baby turns into an adult or that sub-adult size, you know, once it kind of is starting to outgrow that 20-gallon, I believe putting it into its final enclosure of 4 by 2 would be perfectly fine. Of course, as beardies being babies, you don't want to overthrow them or overwhelm them in such a large space, which is why it's usually recommended to do a smaller enclosure first and then eventually go into the large one. However, once they do hit around that sub-adult size, I think they're old enough and big enough to be able to handle, well, this bad boy. But as I stated before, the 4x2 is just the bare minimum size for an adult bearded dragon. You can go even larger if you want. Personally for me, and it's kind of off camera, the enclosure right below this that this one is standing on is actually an animal plastic 6x2x2 that I house my bearded dragon Rex in. I've seen multiple people use different methods. I've seen 5x3x3s and so on. It's really up to you, you know, how big you want to go for your baby bearded or your adult bearded dragon, but 4x2 is going to be the bare minimum that you can pretty much get away with. We have the correct enclosure down. Let's get into the next topic, which is going to be number 2, heating and lighting for your bearded dragon. And starting out, let's talk about heating. Now, there are going to be 2 major heating topics that you're going to want to know for your bearded dragon. That's going to be basking temps and ambient temps. Basking temp is pretty much what it entails, what your bearded dragon is basking on. There are varieties of materials you can use. Personally, for me, I just use some slate stone. There are multiple other things, woods, just having it on the substrate itself, and so on. However, I find that the stones absorb heat the best, making sure that you can use a lower wattage bulb while still getting the same temperature results. The basking temp you are going to want is somewhere around the 110 to 115 range. This is going to be an optimal basking spot for your bearded dragon in order to properly digest its food. Now, in order to measure the actual basking temp, you're going to want something like an infrared thermometer, one of these things. You can get them on Amazon for pretty cheap. It's not going to be something that you can use a probe for. That's going to be ambient temps, where we talked about a little bit. No, with basking temps, you're going to want to measure the surface temperature that your animal is basking on. And let's get into ambient temps. Now, ambient temps are going to be the air temperature around the bearded dragon, pretty much. These are going to be the things where these digital thermometer probes come in handy. Now, remember, never use an analog probe. They're not good. They're a waste of money. They don't accurately measure what you're going to need. A digital probe is going to be much better, and it's going to cost just a couple of extra bucks. Here are the ambient temps you're going to want to hit inside your bearded dragon's enclosure. You're going to want an ambient temp on the hot side. That's going to be where the basking temperature is, or the basking zone is. That's going to want to hit around the high 90s to 100 area right there. Then, of course, going down to the cool side, you're going to want somewhere between the 75 to 79 area. Of course, you're going to want a temperature gradient for your bearded dragon, meaning that an area where the area is hot and the area is a little bit cooler, so the bearded dragon can choose where it wants in that temperature gradient. Let's get into lighting. Now, when it comes to lighting for your bearded dragon, there is one big necessity you're going to need, and that of course is going to be UVB. Of course, there are many different UVB bulbs on the market, the two biggest ones being CFL and the linear bulbs, the just long boys, I like to call them. When we're talking about bearded dragons, you are going to go with the linear bulbs, not the CFLs. You're not going to have a wide enough UVB range for your bearded dragon to properly absorb the UVB rays. But going one step further into that, there is a distinct difference. We have the older T8 bulb models and the newer T5s. Now when it comes to UVB, you definitely want to go with the T5 option. It's going to have a higher output of UVB rays, and all in all is going to be a better choice than the T8s. The two biggest brands I recommend for bearded dragons is going to either be Zoomed, their 10.0 model, or Arcadia in its 12% model. And before we get on to the next topic, if you guys could do me a huge favor, you're finding you're enjoying this care guide and the information here is nice and it's good, you're learning stuff, do me a huge favor, go down there, hit that subscribe button and that like button. That would really help me and the video out itself. Thank you so much. Let's get back into the video. Moving on, let's get into a topic that is, well, gonna be a pretty short one, and that's going to be number 3, the humidity requirements for bearded dragons. This is definitely where some misconceptions come in. Number 1, bearded dragons are not from the desert. You're not gonna want 10 to 20% humidity. My God, I'm not sure how you could actually obtain 20% humidity or even 10% unless you're just out there in the Sahara Desert with one bearded dragon enclosure just chilling. Bearded dragons come from the arid regions. That means they're gonna want somewhere around that general humidity, around that 40 to 50%. However, it can spike a little bit as long as it's not retaining at those higher humidity percentages and dropping down a little bit lower and staying consistently at that 40 to 50%. Honestly, it's pretty easy to hit this humidity requirement. Pretty much every household has a general humidity of around 30 to 35%, so you're already pretty much there. Putting something like a water bowl or anything like that inside in a well-ventilated enclosure, that is a very important thing, will boost that humidity around that 40% to what you're gonna need optimally for your bearded dragon. And that's pretty much it. Not too much to go on to with this topic. Like I said, it's a pretty short one. However, the next one's gonna be a little bit more lengthy, and that's gonna be number 4, the diet requirements for bearded dragons. Honestly, I'm not gonna stretch this into a 20+ minute video. I did already make a diet guide that goes like really in depth on every food source that your bearded dragon needs, but we'll brush up a little bit on that in this video. Now, the diet requirements your bearded dragon's gonna need is gonna be 2 main things. That's going to be greens and protein, which is mostly found in insects. These guys rarely will eat meats or rodents and really shouldn't be eating meats and rodents. They're mostly omnivores, focusing on that insects and greens. Proper ratio from greens to insects is going to depend on, again, the age of the bearded dragon. Babies are going to need a lot more protein than greens, just because of the fact that, of course, these animals are growing, they're getting larger, they're going to want that protein and fat intake to have them grow properly. However, as your bearded dragon ages into the oh-so-nice full-size bearded dragon, they're going to need to cut down more on that fat and protein. They're not going anywhere. Again, a 4x2, they can run around a little bit, but not too much, so they don't need that much proteins and fat, which is going to lead you to substituting with more fruits and veggies. As far as what proper insects you're going to want, there's a variety of things you can choose involving crickets, dubia roaches, red runner roaches, lobster roaches, mealworms, superworms, red wigglers, waxworms, black soldier fly larvae, phoenix worms, which may or may not be the same thing. 10 food groups that you can choose all at once. Those are definitely not all staple foods. There are a percentage of fat and protein intake that you're going to want to avoid and kind of stay towards more of a continuing of some food groups while avoiding more of like a special snack of others. Like I said in that diet guide, I really go more in depth in this, but pretty much crickets, dubias are going to be more of that higher intake, and a lot of the worms are going to be more of that lower intake as a special treat. One thing I do want to add before we get into the next topic is going to be, make sure you start your baby bearded dragon off on greens as well. You don't want to feed him just insects all the way, and then as it gets older to that sub-adult to adult, start trying to feed it greens. It doesn't work out too well. I can't tell you how many times I've heard of the stubborn bearded dragon not eating greens. It actually happens so much. I made a video about some ways that you can get your bearded dragon to eat greens, but a good way to avoid that is going to be starting him out as a baby. And alright guys, we got the care pretty much down at this point. We know the proper enclosure size we're gonna need, the proper temperatures and lighting equipment we're gonna need for our bearded dragon, of course that humidity range, the diet we're gonna wanna feed him, but then, Oh yeah, we are. We're missing one more, and that is going to lead us to topic number 5, what to fill the enclosure with for your bearded dragon. This is where the fun part comes, or at least the fun part for me. There's nothing I love more than decorating your enclosure, and especially when you have a size as a 4x2 or even a 6x2, the possibilities are really endless. So let's start from the bottom up. Now when it comes to the bottom, of course, you don't want to leave the tank bare. You're going to want something that your bearded dragon can grip onto, and that's going to lead what substrate choice. Now I know, I can see the typing fingers ready to call me out. However, I use substrate. Yep, I'm an awful, awful person because I use substrate for my reptile. As long as you follow this guide and have the correct temperatures, the proper lighting equipment, and the proper humidity and hydration requirements, substrate is completely fine. I know. I made a video a while back, I'll put it right here. It's really not that good. I'm actually gonna redo it next Friday, so if you guys do wanna see, why loose substrate for bearded dragons really isn't bad, but please, I know, you're probably grilling me right now, but just hold up. Press the subscribe button so you get notified on Friday when I make the video, and then you'll realize why you're wrong. Substrate is an important part for your bearded dragon. Not only is it going to involve that naturalistic response and instinct to dig, laying females will have that substrate in there where if you're like me and you didn't know that your female was actually a girl, I thought Rex was a boy up until she dug a burrow and laid eggs for me. Substrate, it's really going to be dependent. You can go with the other options. I don't recommend them. I actually think they're more detrimental than loose substrate. I know. I'm just bonkers. But yeah, bearded dragons, for substrate, I use a nice mix of topsoil and sand. It's usually around 60% sand, 40% topsoil. I think it leaves that nice area where they can form burrows, or it's loose enough and nice for them not to hurt their feet or anything. Standing on something like a tile for your entire life, that could be kind of painful. Can you imagine just standing 100% of the time on tile with bare feet? Probably wouldn't be too comfy. Not too comfy for them, which is why I recommend substrate itself. Alright, enough about that. I don't want to make this 20 minutes. Let's get into some more topics at hand. That's going to be climbing stuff. Bearded dragons, believe it or not, are actually semi-arboreal. They do enjoy to climb. Out in the wilds of Australia, you can find them on fence posts, bushes, large rocks, things like that. They're actually not found on the ground too much. For the most part, bearded dragons like to bask for a little bit at a time. They're really not supposed to be basking under the light all day. That's a good indicator that your basking temps are way too low. They'll bask for a certain part in the morning and then they'll head up. Rex, or Toad himself, likes to climb up on this branch, and I have this nice background made for Rex where she can climb up to different shelf units, almost like cliffs. So she really enjoys it. He really enjoys being up. Give your bearded dragon some sticks, some branches. Right there behind me is some Java wood. We've got some other branches he can climb on. Make it a little jungle gym for him. He'll enjoy it. It'll be a good time, and it's aesthetically pleasing to look at. What could be better than looking at? Just tile and, I don't know, a dollhouse or something, and that's all you got in this thing? Or nice naturalistic substrate, these cool branches that you can climb on, things like that. I think I know which one I enjoy more. I think Toad knows which one he enjoys more as well. That's gonna wrap it up for today, folks. The 5 biggest care topics you need to know for your bearded dragon. But now it's your turn. Leave me a comment in the comments saying, what'd you think of this care guide? Do you think I knocked it out of the park, I did a good job, or are you one of those anti-loose substrate people and you're grilling me in the comments as we speak? If you haven't had enough of these bearded dragon videos, I got a nice playlist with a plethora of videos. We got some other awesome videos right down there, and right here is where you hit that subscribe button if you would be so kind. Well, folks, that is gonna be all. I will see you guys until next time, and goodbye.